All right. Hey everyone. So today we have a very special guest. I have here today Torianna Wilson. Um, Everyone say hi. Torianna and I have been we met my first year competing for Miss Georgia, which is in 2018, right? And yeah, so ever since then, Torianna has been such an amazing role model for me. It's kind of like a big sister I relied on when I first started competing because I was very new to the pageant world. So she was so kind to me, and ever since then, we've kind of been, friends. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Torianna. Yeah, like I said, today is kind of weird with the one less hour and everything. So
Thanks for having me. And yes, it's been a pleasure to get to know you from pageants. And I'm super proud of Rebecca. I know this is your thing, but I'm going to brag about you in an interview.
oh, thank you
You're
so
amazing.
much.
I'm super proud of you.
No, thank you so much. All right. So before we get started, just tell a little bit about who you are, what you've been up to recently.
Right. So unfortunately, I did age out of Miss America system a few years ago. So my last year
Yeah.
competing was 2019. I had the pleasure of making the top 15. That was, or not the top 15, top 12. They changed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember in classic Torianna fashion, I was the first person that got called, and I was so shocked or shook, as the Gen Z kids say,
Yeah.
that I all the pictures that Matt Boyd took of like my face when I realized that I made the top 12. It's so funny to look back on. I'm like, you want to
Hmm.
see dramatic, like in a nutshell? Here, look at this picture.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's fun to pull up and show to people when they ask about pageants. So it's just been a really good experience. And I feel like a lot of the professional development that I gained from the Miss America organization has carried over into my career, which is
Hmm.
huge. I feel like communicating with other people is such an essential skill that you have to have as a professional, no matter what
Definitely.
your career path is.
Yeah.
And I feel like really having to take some time to have that introspection, think about what I'm passionate about, think about what's important to me, and be able to convey that in words in a short amount of time to a panel of judges who don't really know you
Hmm.
that well. That's super valuable. And it also kind of helps you understand where you stand on so many issues, controversial or not. It just helps you know who you are more
Yeah.
fully and more completely. And I think that, like I said, the value that carries as it translates over into your career is something that I would not trade for the world.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love that you mentioned that interviews kind of for me, it was kind of like a self-development phase where
Mm-hmm.
preparing for interview, you kind of really have to know yourself fully in order to, speak about yourself because it's all about you, the interview part. So yeah, I think the more I've practiced interview, the more I love it. It's like I said, it's kind of knowing yourself and kind of reflecting on who you are as a person. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up.
I 100%
Um,
agree. And to
mhm,
answer like the tail end of your question, because it was a two-part question, what am I up to now?
yeah.
I am teaching full time. So I teach kindergarten through fifth grade elementary PE, and it's a lot of fun. It's been interesting with COVID, of course, with the masks
Hmm.
and everything. I was virtual for like the first 7 months of the school year.
Oh wow.
And and now we're back in person, which is good because we can play more games. We can do more than just body weight exercises on Zoom and dancing. But it's been good to develop those relationships with the kids in person, and it certainly
Hmm.
is a lot of fun. It keeps me active and keeps me accountable for wanting to be in good shape myself. I am also finishing my master's next month, so I'm really excited about that,
Wow.
and to have another expensive piece of paper to frame and hang up on my wall. That's going to
Of
be
course, yeah.
that's going to be nice because it was a lot of hard work to do with teaching full time and also working on the classes and working part time on the weekends as well. So I've definitely kept myself busy. And
Hmm.
I've also, since I've gotten a little older, I'm 26 now, I have been competing in the Miss Universe organization, and I've really been loving that a lot. So it's been nice to be able to continue my pageant journey through another system.
Oh yeah. First of all, you on the Miss Georgia stage, Miss Georgia USA stage, you looked absolutely gorgeous, phenomenal, everything good I could think of.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm so proud of you. You were truly like a star on that stage.
You are the
Um,
sweetest.
yeah, so talking about your teaching experience, So how has COVID-19, I mean, I know it's definitely affected me as a student, but kind of thinking through the other side as a teacher, how has COVID affected you as a teacher?
The main thing to me as a PE teacher that was my priority going into this school year, knowing that things were just going to be different because of COVID, was
Hmm.
making sure that the kids were still living an active lifestyle. And of course, with any subject in school, there's standards, there's certain things you're supposed to learn each year. But really and truly, for this year, not all of those things were available to us or feasible for us to do, especially virtually. I can't teach team sports when kids are in their living room by themselves on Zoom, logging into
Yeah.
PE every day. So you just have to really adapt and adjust. And I think that, like I said, the most important thing is making sure that they are getting exercise, they're making their bodies stronger and healthier, and becoming more conscientious of the healthful decisions that they can make at home while they are in isolation.
Hmm.
So that was my main priority. And still, to be honest with you, is because even though we're back together in person, we are limited on what we can do.
Yeah.
If we touch equipment, the kids have to sanitize their hands beforehand and after. We just have to make sure we're being as safe as possible. But I actually, little sidetrack, I did get my first dose of the vaccine on Thursday.
Oh,
So
yes.
knowing that the vaccine is becoming more widely available and that people are actually taking that opportunity up and going to get
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
done, that makes me hopeful that we are heading in the right direction back towards some sense of normalcy. I don't think it'll ever be totally the same again,
Hmm.
but I will say I think that people spend a lot of time dwelling on the challenges and the negative things that have come along with COVID-19, but just to talk about some of the positive things that have come out of it, I am really proud of a lot that I've been able to do despite there being a global pandemic going on.
Yeah.
And a few examples of that would be I moved back home to obviously save money right after undergrad. I finished when I was about 23. So I lived at home for about 2 years to save up and just really get in a position where I felt like I could be okay on my own and be like financially stable enough to
Yeah.
not be like, Mom, can you send me money? So I did move out into my own apartment, which was nice. And then I also, because of pageants, I got super into doing hair and makeup, and I've expanded my hair and makeup business. I've been booking a lot more bridal parties lately. I've hired a few assistants, and it's been really nice to just see myself have like financial fruit from something that started out as just something I enjoyed doing just for the creative release of it.
Yeah.
But now it really truly is turning into something that like I make a substantial amount of money doing that. It's not just a hobby anymore. And it's really cool to kind of see that little passion grow into an actual business that I'm able to, you know, rely on for part of my income every year, which is so awesome. And then another thing is I think that we can all agree, like we probably ate more snacks than we would like to admit when the first lockdown happened. And I
Yes.
definitely got
Very
to a place,
true.
regardless of having a degree in health and PE, I did get to a place where I felt like I wasn't my healthiest self and that I didn't have a healthy relationship with food in the sense of I would just reach for it all the time, whether it was
Mm.
because I was bored, because I had nothing better to do. And that was not ultimately the relationship that I wanted to have and maintain with food. So when I did move out, my mom wasn't always trying to feed me like stuff that she had been baking and things like that. So it was easier to not have those temptations around me. And I
Yeah.
learned to cook. I lost about 4 dress sizes.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't really do anything drastic or weigh myself, but I just really was consistent about wanting to move my body and wanting to reach for things that I knew would nourish me inside and out. And it just goes to show that it takes a long time and you have to be patient, because I remember in January, my Miss Georgia USA dress, when I first got it last August and it came in the mail, it's a size 6. I couldn't zip it. I couldn't even get it all the way up. And I was so discouraged about that. I was like, all right, well, I guess I better get to wear it because this is the dress I want to wear on stage. And
Yeah.
when I months later tried it on again, it zipped up like super easy. And I actually had to get it altered to be a little bit smaller so that it would fit. And I genuinely looked at myself in the mirror like around January when I tried it on again and was like I've been working out so much and eating really well, and like I don't even look any different at all. And it wasn't until I put 2 pictures side by side of me trying on the dress that I could really see
Mhm.
those changes. So I think that with being in a pandemic, sometimes like the monotony and like it just seems like the same old, like, okay, I'm at home, I'm doing this every day. You don't really notice those day-to-day changes. So I think that it's really important to track your progress in other ways.
Hmm. Yeah, most definitely. I think that is a really important skill that I think a lot of us have learned during COVID. You know, trying to see the little things in the midst of, the little good things in the midst of pandemic, obviously. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I think for me, I think I've kind of stepped outside of my comfort zone where I've reached back to things that I wouldn't have thought of without a pandemic. For example, I started getting into reading again, which I think without the pandemic I would have never started doing. And I think it's really been good for me to just broaden my knowledge of the world, and just reading some really good books to kind of take me on like an adventure that's not in my brain, in my imagination. So yeah,
For sure.
I think that's a really great part of COVID, and I think that's also true where, um, we do kind of focus on, like, the negative parts, but it's very important that we focus on, the highlights of our life.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm definitely
yeah.
looking forward to reading a little bit more once I have to do a lot of reading for grad school. It's
Mhm.
interesting at least, but I'm excited to be able to just reach for stuff I genuinely want to read for pleasure and not because someone's telling me I have to.
Yeah, yeah.
So, looking forward to being able to do that and enjoy the summer weather.
Mhm. Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about graduate school and how's that been? Has it been online even before COVID, or is it just, like, the
Yes,
same?
actually is because the program that I'm in is a Master of Education. So
Mhm.
Master of Education programs are for teachers who are already certified and they're just trying to upgrade their teaching license to the next tier. So
Oh,
once I
okay.
finish this and my degree is conferred and everything, I'll be able to apply for my teaching license to be upgraded to T5, and I'm T4 right now. And I mean,
Ooh.
on paper, really, it does help you become a better teacher. It helps you become a better teacher and it teaches you more skills. It teaches you different ways of thinking about things that maybe you didn't learn in undergrad. But you also typically get a raise as well with,
Mhm.
especially in public schools, and I am in a public school. So that's a nice little incentive too, because obviously I'm investing financially to be able to get a second degree. So it's nice to know that I'm going to be seeing the fruit of that by getting a little bit of a raise, that over the years the degree will pay for itself and it wouldn't be just
Yeah.
like, oh, can I get a degree and not get paid anymore? I think that it's important, even when you care about stuff, you have to know your worth and you have to know that what you're investing your time and your emotional energy, because like, a lot of emotional energy is required for staying on top of graduate assignments, especially when you
Yeah.
have other hands. I think that you have to make sure that what you're investing your time, money, and emotions into is going to be fruitful after the fact. And I feel like as I can see the finish line, because next month I'm going to be done with classes, which is crazy because it seems like I've been in grad school forever now. But I feel proud. I feel happy about the decision I made to start the degree and to stick it out even when it got tough. Last semester was really tough for me. I had 3 classes. I was adjusting to a new teaching position. I had just moved out. There were just a lot of changes. And obviously, you equate COVID-19 into that, and that doesn't really help
Mhm.
anything either. So there were times when I just literally had to set a timer and just cry for a little bit. And then when the time, like, all right, time to get back to business
Yeah.
and get everything taken care of. And I will say I'm only in 2 classes now. One of them is my like exit project, and then
Mhm.
the other is called leadership and advocacy, and we basically just read about different things that make you a better leader, a more invested leader, a leader who's has more emotional intelligence and can meet the needs of their constituents. And that's been a really interesting class. The data collection for the other class isn't necessarily fun, especially because even though I picked my older kids, my fourth and fifth graders, sometimes they're not filling out the surveys or filling out the information that I'm asking them to. So when it gets to the point where I have to organize all that data together and present it, it's going to be kind of annoying because there's a lot of holes in the data just because kids are forgetful. They're like 10, they're not going to remember to
Yeah.
do everything I ask them to do. But it's been really good. And I'm glad that I did it. And I definitely recommend anybody who's going to be a teacher. My advice would be to, before you even get your first teaching job, just go ahead and go straight into your Master of Education. That way you'll just be ahead of the game when you start teaching. So that's my 2 cents about grad school.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how you're able to, teach full time, but then also be like kind of be on the other side of the screen as a student. Uh, so tell me how like that kind of dynamic has been, being a teacher, then also being a student at the same time.
That's that's interesting to think about because it is weird, like the two roles being a big part of my life because obviously, from 7:30 or whenever I clock in at school, from
Hmm.
7:30 to 3 p.m., I'm the teacher and I'm responsible for helping kids realize something that they don't already know about their health and
Hmm.
fitness. And I think that's a super important job and I'm happy that I have it. But also being the student, I will say sometimes I have to do things I don't want to necessarily do or read about things that I don't really find that interesting. But ultimately, it's useful information for me to know. So I think that if we're comparing the two, it kind of is nice to be a teacher because there are certain standards that we have to cover as PE teachers in public school, but I still get to choose in what way I'm covering those standards. I get to choose the activities, I get to choose the
Hmm.
approach I'm taking if I want to do projects or discussions or different little things like that. And I also, just based on getting to know my students and learning more about them and what works best for them as far as producing genuine learning where they're actually taking something out of each lesson that they can carry with them, you can kind of adapt and adjust at that point and think of different ways that you can present the same information, maybe even from one class to the next, just because of the specific students in that group. I
Yeah.
would do think that with grad school, I have had issues with professors not really meeting my needs and just expecting everybody to be able to do everything the same way, which really
Hmm.
is very counterintuitive with what I learned in undergrad. And
Hmm.
something that this reminds me of is I actually last year was diagnosed very late in life with a learning disability. And it
Oh.
just kind of made everything make sense. I always struggled in school and I would always forget to do things. My learning disability is adult ADD, ADHD.
Mm.
And I really didn't have the resources that I needed. All my teachers just thought that I didn't do assignments or didn't remember to do something because I didn't care. And it really was just because I genuinely, my brain had trouble remembering things like appointments and due dates and just different stuff like that. And also just not having any kind of treatment or any kind of resource to help me out in
Yeah.
high school. It was tough. I mean, I failed math twice in high school. I had to retake it. I didn't end up failing any classes in college. I kind of began to understand like the way that my brain worked more. And I think that probably around senior year, I really started to be like, I genuinely think that I have a learning disability. And for
Mm.
a long time, my physicians, when I would go in for my checkups, when I would mention stuff like that, they'd be like, oh, you just have anxiety. Like you just have anxiety. And they just kept telling me I just have anxiety. And I do, I do have anxiety, but I also have a learning disability. And
Yeah.
that I finally took that leap to talk to a psychiatrist and be evaluated because now, even though, I already got my degree from Georgia, like before even really knowing what the full extent of what was going on in my brain was, now in grad school, like I have the resources I need. I understand what works for me. I understand what I need to do to best learn and process information. And I will say some of my professors were not always kind and understanding of that. And I had a professor one time when I asked for understanding, like to have greater understanding of something. I asked her a question in an email. She responded and said, I have a night class tonight. I don't have time to answer this. You need to go look at the example and read the instructions again. That should be enough.
Um,
That's what she said. And to me, you're always going to run into people who are like that, whether it's a
yeah.
professor, someone that you just don't like the closed-mindedness of how they think, oh, this is how it should be for everyone. And she would just say things like, you've had a lot of extensions on due dates and you like all the other students have turned their stuff in on time. And one
Mm.
of the implications of ADD and ADHD, it just takes longer to process information. And I
Yeah.
know that's what I need. And I was asking for that. in the most respectful way that I could. And that wasn't really being given to me. And I was being made to feel almost like she wanted me to feel like ashamed that I couldn't just be like everybody else. But meanwhile, it's not like I in the womb was like, oh, hey God, like please make me be born with ADD so that I can annoy the professor when I'm 24 later in life. Thanks. Like that's not, I didn't ask for this. It's just something that happened
Yeah.
and I have to learn how I best have to operate with it.
Hmm.
And I will say my professors this semester, total 180. I have amazing professors. They're super understanding and kind when I need to ask for more details or a further explanation of something that I might not quite understand the first time that they present the information. And I got through it. And the lady that gave me such a hard time, I ended up getting an A in one of her classes and a B in the other. So I'm like, okay, so you were mad at me for what? From what?
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
everything and I did well. It's fine. So that's been an interesting thing as well. And I think that it also makes me more empathetic as an educator because now that I understand the way that ADD and ADHD manifest themselves, I can recognize that in my students, even the ones that may not necessarily be aware of that yet or have parents that are aware of that yet.
Hmm.
And because I know what works well for people whose brains work like mine, I can kind of accommodate my students that I'm seeing those similar needs in. So that's been really nice as well.
Yeah. That's that's amazing. I had no idea that you got to deal with that. So going back to the thing you talk about, like working with your students. So I
Mhm.
actually this year, with COVID and learning about yourself and stuff, starting new things, I actually started a club at my school called Hearts of Gold Society, where students at my school would mentor younger kids with special needs, disabilities, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like this weekly club thing. I actually have a class tonight where I'm teaching the third and fourth graders reading, and
Aw.
yeah, I love it so
I
much.
love second and third grade are probably my favorite. Well, it's just like they're old enough to understand directions more
Yeah.
fully, and you don't have to explain it super watered down like you do for kindergarten. But also sometimes like the fourth, not really the fourth graders, more so the fifth graders are like, oh, I'm too cool to do this, or
Oh
like
no, no,
I'm
no,
not
no.
that. The third
The
grade,
fifth graders, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally get that. No, fifth graders, they get on my nerves. But but yeah, so I've had to kind of, the organization we're partnered with is called True Love for Hope, and I've been working with them, volunteering with them for over 3 years now. And it did take a while to kind of get used to the way these kids learn and the way they absorb information. So I think that's a really interesting thing where it does take time where you have to kind of learn like these kids specifically, because I've been working with like the same group for like a year now. So you kind of have to learn how they work, how they think, and adjust your teaching style to them, I guess. And yeah, I think that's quite I mean, not hard, but like kind of a challenge to overcome as a teacher, you know, working with these kids for an entire year for you, right? It's an entire year you're working with the same group of kids and kind of learning how they adjust, how they learn, and how you can change your teaching styles to the way they do things.
And it can be especially challenging when you have a group that your students in one particular class have so many varying needs and so
Yeah.
many, that is when it gets really really challenging for sure.
Hmm.
Might have one kid who is just bouncing off the walls, one kid who's really shy and soft spoken, one who has special needs, one who has ADD, like one who has an emotional behavioral issue where they lash out or they get angry or they lose their temper easily. And having all of those kids in one group is challenging, but at the same time, that prepares those kids for the real world and it keeps
Yeah.
you ready to engage with the real world, because the fact of the matter is in life, whatever you do, not everybody's going to be on the same page and doing
Hmm.
things the same way. You have to understand that other people are different, other people have different views, other people have different needs, and that's not just in the classroom, that's in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely a really important skill for, everyone. All right. So you probably don't know this, but my platform is actually all about stepping outside of your comfort zone and encouraging teens to, set goals and do whatever they can to reach their goals. And I kind of have 3 pillars in my platform. It's to be motivated, be involved, and to be an example. So let's start with the first one. What is something that has kept you motivated through, this pandemic? And how do you just keep yourself engaged and to persevere through any challenge?
That's a great question. I think the main thing to understand about the nature of motivation is that true motivation does have to come from within. Nobody else can want it for you more than you have to want it for yourself. So whatever that goal or whatever that want is that you have to be in control of steering that ship and deciding how badly you want that. For me, honestly, participating in pageants keeps me really motivated because I know that I'm going to have to be twirling around in a swimsuit in front of a lot of people. And
Yeah.
I would like to look good while I do that. So that definitely keeps me motivated in the gym. It also keeps me motivated to know that my students are looking to me as an example.
Mhm.
If I was extremely overweight and I was teaching them about health and fitness, how counterintuitive and confusing is that for a 5 or
Yeah.
6 year old? So this person who's 400 pounds is teaching me how I can stay healthy. I'm not really sure if they're credible and I can believe what they're saying. And even though 5-year-olds don't really know what the word credible means yet necessarily, you wouldn't want to take advice from someone who you don't respect and think that they know what they're talking about. So with being a PE teacher, that helps me stay motivated with my fitness. I'm super into Enneagrams. So I don't know if you've taken the Enneagram test ever, but I'm a type 3, and the defining adjective of type 3s is the achiever. And I love, love, love to achieve. I obviously I get frustrated if I'm not good at something the first time I do it. But if it's something that I truly want to get better at, I persevere and I get very, very strategic about how I can reach that ultimate destination that I want to get to. And I will say with fitness, I keep coming back to that because it truly kind of is the cornerstone of my life. I mean, it's my career. It's something that I try to engage in every day, some type of physical activity. But for me, it's just an ongoing dynamic relationship. It's not necessarily like one goal that I have, but it's really important with goal setting to constantly reevaluate your progress and readjust. Because you never want to just get to some point and then just be satisfied. Like, okay, great, I reached this goal. I think what's next is always a really important question to ask. And what's next doesn't always have to be something higher. For example, I think about this example of when someone was interviewing Tom Brady. He had won, gosh, I don't even know how many he has now, how many rings he had. But he had a lot. Okay. At this time, he had 4 rings. And they were asking him, well, what's next? And besides the typical, we're going to Disney answer that all the football players do, in this sport. He was talking about, he's like, I want to know what's next. I'm not satisfied yet. I don't remember exactly what he said. I didn't watch the interview, but a professor was telling me about it. But he got to that point, the Super Bowl, that's the highest honor and the highest achievement as an NFL player that you can reach as a team member. Maybe not as an individual, but with your team, that's the highest achievement you can reach. And when you get to that, what's next can't always be something more than that. Sometimes you hit that ceiling of there's nowhere else to go. So I think that's the time when you have to choose something different to pursue and always have something that you're working towards to improve yourself. I think it's important to be a lifelong learner. And for me, when I aged out of Miss America, I reached the top 12 my last year. I couldn't come back another year. I got too old. And that just is what it is. And for me, instead of just wallowing for the rest of my life that was it and I can never do anything more, I started participating in the Miss Universe organization. I started getting involved with local pageants by emceeing and judging. And I've started coaching some younger girls on interview. I mostly work with teens and elementary aged girls because I don't really want to coach Miss clients that much until I myself am totally aged out of Miss, but I
Yeah.
still have a couple years, so it'll be a minute with Miss
Yeah.
Class. But I've really enjoyed developing those relationships. So for me, like, I'm never going to be Miss Georgia America. That's never going to be a reality for me because I had my window of time, and that's not something that was in the plans for my life.
Yeah.
But having that experience, I'm now in a position where I can speak to my experience and I can use my teaching skills and my pageant experience to help my teen and elementary clients get to a point where maybe they could do it.
Yeah.
So there's always something else you can work towards, even if you hit, I mean, for example, now, like if I won Miss Universe, there's nothing really else that I can do
Mhm.
higher than that as far as a pageant honor in that particular pageant system. But there are other ways that I can use that success to enact great change around me. So I think that's a really important thing to think about with motivation, is always having something that you're working towards, because if you're not working towards anything, I believe that you're just going through the motions and you're not really going to feel fulfilled at the end of the day because you aren't working
Mhm.
towards anything. So always reevaluate and always reset goals. That's my little in a nutshell with motivation.
Yeah. That's great advice. I actually really learned something from what you said. And yeah, I think also what goes with motivation is probably doing what you love. I mean, if you are doing something that you don't have a goal for, or doing something that you don't love, I mean, you're not going to have motivation to reach your goals and whatever that is. So yeah, I
Agreed.
mean, obviously I can tell that you love being involved in pageantry. I mean, it's
Mhm.
obviously a passion of yours. So I love that you're continuing to extend that to, teaching younger girls and sharing your experience. I love that. I think also it's probably keeping yourself well-rounded and not just having just one thing you're putting all your focus on.
Mhm.
For me, I'm a student, a full-time student, and I'm a junior in high school. But then I'm also participating in a lot of extracurriculars, such as, the club. I dance 2 to 3 times a week, and then pageantry. So whatever it is, if I reach the end of something, I can have something to like lie back on that I love doing, and I can have a goal set for that. So yeah, I love that about motivation.
Being well-rounded just makes life more interesting too. It's like,
It
I think,
does.
example, I like to use food as a way to paint examples of things. So it's like, like Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, they're really good. But if
Mhm.
you had them for every meal every day, that's really boring. You got
Yeah.
to make life. I love health and fitness, but if health and fitness was like the end all be all, everything that made up Torianna, I don't think that I would really be happy. I have to have other things that interest me as well. I love music. Singing was my talent when I participated in the Miss America organization. So I
Yeah.
still love to sing. I still play guitar and write a little bit here and there when I have time. And that's an important creative release for me. Going to my fitness classes that I go to, going to the gym and working out or going on runs is an important physical release for me.
Mhm.
And then I think that being responsible for teaching younger kids in my career as a teacher, and also being a student myself right now in grad school, finishing that up, that's a really important intellectual release for me. So you really do have to kind of dissect the different facets of your life and make sure that you're nourishing and strengthening all those parts of your life, not just
Yeah.
one. So I can't stress enough how much I agree with you that it's super important to be well-rounded and have diverse interests.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I guess we can move on to the next point. So the next one is being involved. And I guess, how have you stayed involved in your community? How have you given back? Any like volunteer experience you would like to share?
Yes. So the main thing that I loved doing before the pandemic hit, unfortunately,
Hmm.
with my grad assistantship at grad school, I had the opportunity to be an after school teacher for a program called After School All Stars. And
Hmm.
basically, I would just go Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I had a group of kids at Brown Middle School in Atlanta, and they just got to they just got to be kids and have fun for an extra hour after school. And another cool thing about the program is, depending on what area of the city you're in, there is food insecurity. That is a reality that does stricken people, especially in urban areas. So a lot of kids are getting every single one of their meals, every single one from school during the week. And they otherwise might not be able to have it depending on their family situation. So they're getting their breakfast, they're getting their lunch at school, and then with after school all stars, they're also providing a dinner as well. So it makes me feel good to know that not only are they getting to have that physical release, be active, have fun, and enjoy being kids, but I also know they're not going to go home with an empty stomach. Like they're going to have food in their belly, and they're going to be able to continue coming back to school, getting an education, and hopefully putting themselves in a position where they don't have to continue that cycle of having kids and having those kids need to rely on school for their meals. So I really love that the program existed and gave those kids a chance to do that, because I mean, we know peer pressure exists. There's all kinds of bad things that you can get involved with as a student if you aren't rooted in something else that's taking up your time, like a sport or a hobby or an activity. The reality is there are young kids and young teens that do drugs or do things that they shouldn't be doing. And having after school all stars and having a place for them to be for a few hours after school each day, that might be all it takes to prevent them from going down that wrong path. And for me, mentoring and kind of setting kids up for success as far as the decisions they make for themselves, as far as like what they are and aren't going to do with their bodies, is really important to me, because my dad does struggle with drug addiction. He actually recently had a relapse back in December, and that was really tough. And I just, I will never be able to fully understand what that's like to be so addicted to something, but it truly is a mental illness. And I don't believe that people who struggle with drug addiction are criminals. I think that they're victims of a mental illness.
Oh yeah.
And anything I can do as a role model or as a mentor to prevent other kids from going down that path is so important to me. And I want to put myself in those positions where I can hopefully be that light and be that influence that keeps them on the right path in life.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I think that's so great. One of the best things about the Miss America program, I think, where, it gives every title holder a platform where they can, be more involved in their community and do more volunteer work. And also having that, platform again to speak about these issues that they may personally have struggled with. And yeah, I think it's great that you're using, your teaching experience and then also your story with your dad about and using those to, serve your community. I think that's so amazing. And I think every single person should be able to do something like that. All right. So the last point is to be an example. And this is more of like, who is someone that you look up to as a role model? Someone that, you kind of emulate their actions and incorporate them into your life.
It's so hard to just choose one. It really
It
is.
is.
I
You can
might
say
have
multiple. You don't have to choose
I might
one.
have to give you a couple for different reasons.
Yeah, of course.
So the first I will start with is my great grandmother, who she passed away in 2016. But something that I really admire about her and learned from her life example was just how important it is to do everything you can to show people unconditional kindness, because you don't know what they're going through. She genuinely was a person who, if someone came up to her and said, "Oh, Margie, I love your bracelet," she would literally take it off and be like, "Have it, take it."
Oh.
And that's just how she lived her entire life. And what's insane is, so she was one of 9 children. Her
Wow.
dad was shot and killed when she was like 4 years old. So she grew up without a dad. She dropped out of school in 3rd grade to go work in a factory. That's before there were child labor laws. And she made 50 cents a week. Of course, that was a little bit more back then, but that's still like
Yeah.
pretty low wage even for back then. But she made 50 cents a week, and like all her siblings, basically when they got old enough to be competent in the factory, like, or wherever they were able to find work, they had to drop out and work. And so she ended up getting a job with Riches, which is now the department store Macy's. It used to be called Riches.
No.
And she worked there for over 50 years in the shoe department. And she didn't have an education really, beside like up to third grade. She was done. That's not something that's allowed now, thankfully, because of more laws and regulations. But that was the reality. She was born in 1922. So that was the reality. And she worked in the shoe department for over 50 years. And by working with that high-end clientele, she truly watched and learned a lot about manners and about how to speak properly and just different things that she didn't have the opportunity to learn in school on her own, but she used that opportunity to learn from others and truly, truly became such an elegant woman. Such an elegant woman, had amazing style, was so kind. And she genuinely came from nothing. Like her mattress was literally like a flippin' haystack with a sheet over it. They didn't even have mattresses. And she really made a life for herself by working hard. And I absolutely, that it just blows my mind that she even went through that, because with how easy all of us have it now and how accessible more opportunities are now than they were in the 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could have had that same level of success. So she was really, really courageous and persevered through a lot of challenges. So I really admire her for that. I also have, gosh, I can't even name just one, but I will say just in general, like most of the women that I've become really close friends with through pageants, I admire them for different reasons, because not only is it great to celebrate their outer beauty, because undoubtedly they're all so beautiful on the outside, but they truly are beautiful on the inside. They have unique passions. They have unique interests and talents, and they use those interests and talents to make a difference in the lives of others around them, whether that be through music or through volunteering at food banks or having a podcast. All the things that I've seen my friends that I've met through pageants do, I'm proud of what they're doing, and I'm proud to claim them as a friend, because they're really making a difference. And they're not just using pageantry as a way to be like, oh, I'm so cute, look at me in my crown, I'm so beautiful, validate me. It's not just about that. It's really about the relationships that they're fostering with others and what they're doing in the community around them too. So I'm inspired to up my game and do better and constantly want to be a better version of myself because of the influence of all of the women around me in pageants that have become my dear friends. So I'm really thankful for that. And of course, I look up to my mom and everything like that too. I have professors over the years that I've looked up to, but in general, I'm just amazed at how many incredible women have truly touched my life in one way or the other, whether it be in a single moment and just something that carried with me, like something that I learned from someone that I maybe only met one time, or people that I've had deep friendships with for years and years that continue to just show up for me and be supportive of all my endeavors. I love to celebrate women and support other women, and I truly feel celebrated and supported by all the women in my life that I'm close with too.
Yeah, most definitely. Same for me. I think the Miss America organization really does foster a sense of sisterhood, and the fact that, we have 50 plus women that we can talk to and kind of relate to in a personal level about, not just about pageantry, but like our personal platforms. I think that's really great. And yeah, I think it's just having women, like women supporting women, is probably the strongest thing ever. I love that so much. And I mean, it's Women's History Month. I think that it's the perfect time to celebrate the inspirations and achievements of women all across the world. I think that's absolutely phenomenal that we have this month dedicated for us. I love that so much. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Do you have any, just general pageantry advice? And what is like some of the best things that you've learned taken away from the Miss America program?
Ooh, general pageant advice. I'm going to try to give you the condensed version, because I could talk about this for hours. I really could. I think that one of the most important things that I learned, so one of my dear friends is Shari Guzman, and she was the first runner-up a few years ago in Miss Georgia America, and she and I have stayed in touch. I think we're getting dinner next week. I love her though. She and I have become really close, and she's just such an awesome human being. And I remember before I really knew her that well, I was competing in the Miss Cobb County pageant, and she said a bunch of really awesome stuff. But to be honest, the only thing that I really remember that she said that has stuck with me over the years is there's no wrong way to be yourself. And I think that oftentimes we want to look to the left and we want to look to the right at what the other girls are doing and what they look like and what their style is and what their platform is, and just compare ourselves. And instead, I think that in pageantry, the most important way to succeed is to have some introspection, identify what your strengths are, and lean into those in a way that you can do impressive things using your own talents. If you're not good at dancing, don't try to be a dancer and like do dance for your talent or anything like that. Like, what are you good at? What do you feel like you could teach other people about, and really just take that and run with that? And I think that in interview, which I feel and know from getting like on stage question awards a few times and things like that, that was an area where I really excelled, was in interview and just making those connections with those judges quickly. And something that I remember that someone like, months later that had judged me one time pulled me aside and said, your interview is a breath of fresh air. It felt like it was conversational. It didn't feel like it was canned and calculated. Judges are talking to a lot of girls. And ultimately, if you want to win whatever pageant or competition you're competing in, you have to shine and you have to stand out. And it's not really always necessarily about the exact words that you're saying. It's your confidence. It's how you present the information. It's how sure and secure you are in what you believe in. And I think it's really important to go into interview with that goal of it being conversational. And you want to show them your heart. You want to show them your passion, your interests, why you're the girl for the job and no one else. And if you overthink that too much about, oh gosh, like I need to make sure what I say sounds exactly right. The first thing that comes to mind is probably going to read very genuinely when it comes out of your mouth, if it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, not to say that you can just completely just go in there and not prepare. You do need to prepare, and you need to have an opinion and be, okay, I'm back. And you need to be aware of what's going on in the world, but you don't have to be so calculated. Just be who you are. Your opinion is yours, and you need to own that. And there's a way to practice being diplomatic about that. You can always say your opinion without attacking the people who disagree with you. So that's important to consider. And I think about it when I walk into the interview room, I pretend there's an imaginary switch. And when I flip that switch, the words like and do not come out of my mouth. Like, whatever. You can be so smart, so intelligent, and that little just word vomit of saying like and or just really makes you sound unsure of yourself. It makes you look like you're not confident, and it makes you look like you're really not totally sure about what you're saying. So in conversation, of course, you're going to say it. I say like all the time. Okay. But when you're in that formal interview setting, you really have to be conscientious of that. And that can, I think, truly as a judge, when I notice that girls not only have a solid opinion that makes sense in how they're explaining it, but they're not using those little crutch words like and it makes you just, your whole presentation, you just look so much more intelligent. You look so much more capable of the job. And that's someone that they would trust to be interviewed on live television without looking silly, because they know you can handle the pressure of being asked questions on the spot. So I think it's really important to just be introspective about who you are and what you want to convey to the judges, and be that person. Don't be anybody else in the interview room. I think it's also with the stage and everything like that. Whatever you're not doing, someone else that's competing against you is doing to prepare, whether that be reading the news every day, whether that be running through your talent 2 times a day, or whether that be doing a practice on stage question 1 time a day and timing yourself 20 seconds with a timer. You need to be practicing and doing whatever you can. Pageants don't have to be your whole life, but if you're serious about it, it needs to be in your daily thoughts, and you need to be doing at least a handful of things each day that are going to ultimately make you a girl who is in a better position to be ready to assume that title and have that job and that responsibility of being Miss Georgia or being Miss Georgia's outstanding teen. So you need to practice your walking. You need to practice your posing. You need to practice your eye contact that you're going to make with the judges at what time during your talent and on stage. And the more you have a plan, the much less stressed you're going to be the day of. If you're overthinking it the day of, that's going to show on your face. It's going to show in your performance. But if you do all the work beforehand, you show up for pageant week or competition week and you're able to just have fun because it's all muscle memory. You put in all the work, you practice it, you turned off your like and switch. You know your poses, you know where you're going to be looking to make eye contact and make that connection with the judges on stage. And you're not going to be nervous because you prepared. So then you can just go do the dang thing. That's one of my favorite sayings, just do the dang thing. So that would be my two things, is just really try to keep interview conversational so that you can be memorable, and practice. Can't stress practicing enough. It's so important to feel confident the day of and know that you're prepared.
Yeah. I like that you brought up how it's kind of muscle memory, and the more you practice beforehand, the less nervous you're going to be. I think that's so true, and you can kind of apply that to, you know, any situation. I am someone who actually struggles with test anxiety quite a lot, and I do find myself where, you know, I haven't studied that much the night before, or I haven't studied long over a week long time, where I am a lot more anxious and I do get a lot more nervous before taking a test. And I think that's definitely applicable to pageantry as well, where the more you practice, the more comfortable you're going to be, and it's going to be part of you. It's going to be part of your body. You're just going to be yourself and shine on that stage. So.
Right. And if you're constantly reviewing the material, the test is basically the actual competition itself. Yeah. That's a good way to think about it. It's like you genuinely have to study for it. One thing that's been really helpful for me too, that isn't necessarily like something that I am physically doing, is I've been really good about keeping up with watching other pageants and kind of beginning to understand what the similarities are in girls who do well in pageant systems. I've been watching a lot of USA pageants, and I've gotten to the point where, you know, maybe I'm not always going to be like, oh yeah, that's the winner, and I'm not right every single time. But generally I can watch the prelims and be like, okay, like I think this is going to be the top 15 based on what I saw. And of course I don't see their interviews, so I don't have the full picture. But a lot of times, many of the girls that I am like, okay, yeah, they're going to make the top, they do. And it's something that you can see on stage. Like I truly believe that there's like this invisible it factor that you just have to shine in pageants. And you can tell that by watching people. And not to say that you have to copy someone else and do what someone else is doing. You should be your own version of yourself, but you learn from others who have success in the endeavors that you also want to be successful in. So you can learn bits and pieces from other people and then make them your own, if that makes sense. So that's mainly what I do to prepare, aside from, and then obviously exercise is a part of my life anyway, but I just, you know, make sure that I'm really sticking to my exercise routine, especially right before the pageants.
Yeah. I think that goes back, you know, having people that you look up to, people who excel at something, is something that keeps you going, and, you know, going back to keeps you motivated. And, you know, I started competing in the Miss America program because you probably know Rory Pan. She started competing.
Sweetheart, I love her. She's
same.
she's so pretty too. What the heck?
I
and
know.
She goes to Ivy League college. Okay, Rory.
Harvard, like number one in the country. I know, she's literally the best at everything. I adore her. But yeah, she danced at the same dance studio as me, and, you know, the way I saw the Miss America program's effect on her, the way she was so much more confident in her own skin and wasn't afraid to speak about the issues that she believes in, and just had so many more opportunities to serve her community. I think those were such amazing character traits that she, you know, learned from the Miss America program. So that's kind of what inspired me to, you know, start competing, and then also
Mhm.
keeps me competing because I can see the effects that the program really has on these girls. So yeah, it's really amazing this how much this program has changed my life and so many other people's lives. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So this interview has been quite long, but I'm so happy I got a while to talk to you. So last question, I guess, what are some of your future plans? What are you excited for in the future? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I do have one more year of eligibility in the USA system, so I will be competing again. I am not a quitter, so I
Of
will
course
be
not.
competing. And I will say that it's been an adjustment because I came from the Miss America organization where I had measurable success. I had validation from, careful Leo. I have a little pup here with me.
Oh.
But he just almost like fell through the blinds. That's funny. Anyway, so I made the top 12 my last competition season in Miss America, and then I competed in Miss USA for the
Mhm.
first time. Miss Georgia USA didn't make the finals. So this year I really, really stepped up my game, stepped up my preparation, and truly brought the best version of myself that there has ever been to stage. Not to say that I don't think I can continue improving. I think I can absolutely continue improving. But I didn't make the top 15 again. Again. And it is disappointing, but the reason that I know that pageantry is something that is such a huge part of my life is that it didn't make me want to say, well, forget this and give up. It just made me want to do better. It made me
Yeah.
want to do even better. So now that I have come as far as I've come, I have elevated goals for next year. I am going to expect even more of myself next year because I genuinely did not know where I was going to be with my fitness and with my confidence and my interviewing capabilities and everything like that going into this year.
Mhm.
And I truly exceeded my own expectations of myself. And regardless of not having that validation of making the top 15 or not, I'm sure you've heard this a million times. Different panel, different day, different
Yeah.
outcome. Sometimes those 5 people are not your people and they're not going to
Yeah.
pick you because you're not the one that they're going to be drawn towards. And there's nothing you can do about that. And regardless of if I ever win Miss Georgia USA or if I ever win a state title, it makes me a better person and it allows me to constantly reflect and replan where I'm going, where I'm headed, what I want to do. So I am going to be competing again. And
Yay.
I guess you could say like I've already started working on it now. I mean, I'm still sticking with
Yeah.
the exercise routine. I'm still making sure I'm paying attention to other pageants and keeping up with what's going on and this is
Mhm.
just the system that I'm competing in. And I'm so hopeful that as we're on this tail end of COVID and more people are getting vaccines, that I do have a lot of connections in Atlanta that I think that I'll be able to do some really awesome philanthropy events and be able to raise some money for some awesome causes that I really believe in and that I'm passionate about. And that
Yeah.
can only help me be a more standout contestant next year. So I won't be giving up and won't be getting discouraged. Sure, the outcome wasn't what I wanted, and I would have loved that validation of making the top 15 or winning or whatever. But
Yeah.
you've heard the saying, it is what it is. The outcome that happened with this year's pageant happened, and I can either dwell on it and be miserable and backtrack, or I can keep my head up and I can look forward and I can reevaluate how I can do better next time. So that is basically my main plan with that. I am next month moving in with one of my best friends from pageants. I'm in the city right now, but we're moving into an apartment together in Buckhead, and it's Alexa. I love her.
Oh my God, I love
So
Alexa.
we're gonna be living together, which is exciting because we literally at least talk on the phone or text probably every single day, and we FaceTime all the time. I am obsessed with her. She's my favorite person on this earth. But she and I are moving in together. I am going to be working for Amana Academy again next school year and continuing to drive from the city to Alpharetta to teach there. I'll
Mhm.
be getting ready for pageants. I will be continuing with my fitness routine. And I am really hopeful that my makeup business is going to continue to grow. I'm getting more and more booking inquiries. I have a few weddings on the books that are coming up. So I'm really looking forward to having that business grow and just continuing after my goals with everything. And, you
Mhm.
know, if you ask me again in a couple years, I'll probably say I'm getting ready to buy a house or getting ready to do something else. But for right now, like my purpose, I think, is to just continue to educate my students about how they can be the healthiest version of themselves, and for me to continue working towards my dream of one day being Miss USA. So I'm going to keep working towards that for the foreseeable future.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm so excited for you. I think it's really nice to hear, other people what other people are kind of working on and, seeing all that you've done so far and then continuing to do. It's honestly so inspiring for me and everyone watching out there. So thank you so, so much for talking to me
Of
today, Torianna.
course.
It's been so
Yes.
much fun. I've honestly learned so much. You are such an inspiration to so many people. And yeah,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for being on here with me.
Of course. It's been a pleasure to get to talk to you about what I'm passionate about. And of course, you know,
Yeah.
you can always reach out to me if you need anything as
Hmm.
you're preparing for the Miss Georgia this summer. It's coming up quick,
It is. Yeah, I know. 3 months. This year has gone by, slowly when you think about it, but then also so fast.
but
So, so
also in a
fast.
blink. It be like that. It really do.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy. All right.